All right, we're working on our final review for the spring final, and we're going to begin with number 17. And number 17 addresses the standard 14.0, which is solving a quadratic function by factoring or completing the square. Okay, now I'm going to do 17 through 20, and I'm going to solve them all by factoring. If am given a choice to factor or complete the square, if I can factor, I'm going to do it every time because it's easier. But I'll give you a couple questions at the end where we actually complete the square, because you really need to know how to do that. So, starting with number 17, we have b squared plus 5b equals 0. Now, when I look at this, I notice I have an a term and I have a b term. Bye, sweetie. Have a great weekend. And actually, c is 0 because I don't have a c term. I have an a term and a b term. Well, when I'm factoring, what I'm going to do is use my menu, and the first thing I'm going to look for is a GCF. And I happen to see that I have a GCF, and there's a b in each of these. So I'm going to pull out my GCF, and I'm going to get b plus 5 equals 0. Now I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to say, is it a special case? And it's not a PST because it's not a trinomial, and it's not dots because it's a binomial, but it's not the difference of two squares, so it's not a special case. Now I'm going to ask myself, can I use X-man or extra X-man? And I'm going to say, no, I can't, because it's not a trinomial. It's a binomial, and the only way I can factor a binomial is if it has a GCF, which I already pulled out, or if it's dots, which this is not. So I'm done. So if I want to solve this, that means I have to find my x-intercepts. So I'm going to take every factor that contains a variable and set it equal to 0. So here's a factor, and here's a factor. I'm going to set them equal to 0, b equals 0, and b plus 5 equals 0. I'm going to use the zero product property, and I'm going to isolate my variable. So b is 0, there's one of my solutions right there, and here I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, and b equals negative 5. So my two x-intercepts are 0, 0, and negative 5, 0. So if I were to graph this, I would have one intercept, x-intercept at negative 5, and another at 0. And since this has a leading coefficient that's positive, that means it would open up. So I'm just guessing, but it might look something like that. Opening up, and with your two x-intercepts at negative 5 and 0. Okay, let's try number 18. 6x squared minus 24x equals 0. Okay, this is a binomial. The only way I'm going to be able to factor a binomial is if it has a GCF and if it's dots. So I look, and this does have a GCF of 6x. And if I pull that 6x out, I get x minus 4, and that equals 0. Let me double check. There's 6x squared, yep, and there's negative 24x, yep. Okay. It's not a special case because it's not a PST, it's not a trinomial, and it's not dots because it's the difference, but it's not the difference of two squares. 4 is a square number, but x is not a squared number or a squared term, so it's not dots, so it's not a special case. I'm not going to use X-man or extra X-man because it's not a trinomial, so I'm done factoring, but now I still have to solve. So I'm going to take each factor containing a variable, set it equal to 0, and then I'm going to solve by isolating the variable. And there's your two roots, 0 and 4. So again, if I were to graph this, I would have a root at 0 and a root at positive 4. This is a leading coefficient that's positive, so once again it would open up, so maybe it would look like that, or maybe it would look like that. I don't really know where my vertex is, but I know it opens up, and these are my two roots right here. All right, let's look at 19. 19 says y squared minus 9y plus 14 equals 0. And I'm supposed to solve this by factoring or completing the square. Well, I'm going to try and factor it. I don't see a GCF. It's not a PST. It's not dots. The leading coefficient is 1, so I'm going to use regular old X-man. A times C is 14. B is negative 9. What two numbers multiplied together equal 14 and added together equal negative 9? Well, I know 7 times 2 is 14, but 7 plus 2 doesn't equal negative 9. But if I make both of these negative, negative 7 times negative 2 is positive 14, and negative 7 plus negative 2 is negative 9. So my two factors are, don't forget it's still equal to 0, y minus 7 and y minus 2. That's completely factored. Now I'm going to set each factor containing a variable equal to 0, and then I'm going to isolate my variable, and I'm going to find out that y equals 7 or y equals 2. So if I were to graph this, I would have an x-intercept at positive 2 and an x-intercept at positive 7. And I also know that if I plugged 7 back into this equation, everywhere I see a y, it would be a true equation. And if I plugged in 2 or substituted 2, everywhere I see a y, it would be a true equation, because these are the solutions to this equation. In other words, these are the y values that would make this equation true. And I'm going to do one more on this video, and it's number 20. And I'm going to get a squared minus 10a plus 24 equals 0. And I'm going to factor it, so I don't see a GCF, and it's not a perfect square trinomial. This is a square number, but this is not. It's not dots, not a binomial. The leading coefficient is 1, so I'm going to try regular old X-man. A times C is 24. B is negative 10. Let's see, 24 is 6 and 4, and 6 and 4 is 10, but this is a negative 10. So once again, if I make these both negative, negative 6 times negative 4 is positive 24, and negative 6 plus negative 4 is negative 10. So my two binomials are a minus 6, a minus 4 equals 10. It's completely factored, but it's not solved. Now to solve it, to get the solutions that will make this true, the values of a that will make this equation true, I have to set each factor containing a variable equal to 0, and then I have to isolate my variables. So again, if I were to graph this, I would have x-intercept at 4 and 1 at 6. Leading coefficient is positive, so I know it's going to open up. So maybe it'll look like that. Maybe it'll look like that. I don't know, but I know it touches the x-axis here, and it opens up. Okay, that's it for this video.